Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 554, recorded live on Sunday, April 7th. I'm your host, Patrick. With me this week, we have returning to the show, Nimvind.
Merry Nimbus.
Welcome back, sir. Glad you could join us. This week's screenshot. This is a screenshot. Not even the tiniest halfling can hide from the den mother in the 409th DDO screenshot of the week. Thanks, Knife Palm, for sending in this week's screenshot. Face full of bear. That's
very close up.
Yes, I am kind of curious. Like, how did someone manage to get that that look? Because it's not dead, right? So.
Yeah, it's obviously thrashing at him. I'm assuming maybe lag. Sometimes lag can produce some really good Kodak moments.
Sure. It might also be one of the, like, if you're wondering, like, want some tips on how to get the best kind of actiony shots, the best way to do it is to take a video and then pull a frame out, which might be what happened here. But at the same time, there's no UI here and they're really zoomed in, so it's nice shot, a lot of fun. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can catch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums, iTunes, or from our website, DDOCast.com. DDOCast is hosted by Cyber Ears, the awesome podcast hosting network, and shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will probably be next Sunday. Just a heads up, Sunday is going to be like the primary day for the show for a while, just because my umpiring schedule is usually busy on Saturdays. We don't have games on Sundays. So that's kind of why most of the shows will be on Sunday for a little bit. But at DDOCast on Twitter is a really great place. DDOCast.com has a calendar. You can check out that as well. I try to keep that up to date, including store sales and bonus days if you are into those kind of things and don't want to find it on the forums or whatever. On the podcast this week, we're going to continue our series on Past LIfe Prioritization. We're going to talk about racial reincarnation after we do the news and stuff. I don't expect that to be a two-parter, right? We kind of, both of us feel like we should be able to wrap this up in one shot. It's 20-30 minutes. It's not a lot to talk about in racial reincarnation, actually, but we'll make sure we give a good cover. If we need to, we'll split it into two. But right now we're planning on one shot here. But before that, we got a bunch of Sharn stuff that we can talk about. Sharn made it onto Lamania. I would say really for the first time, right? Like the previous ones on Lamania were very much about the tiefling and inquisitive. They didn't have any content with Sharn. This time we got content, so pretty exciting. Looking at
yeah,
all
I
that
felt
stuff.
like, sorry to butt in, but I felt like the first Lamanias were trying to like get the pre-bundle assorted stuff done first, and
Absolutely,
then
that's absolutely what they were doing. So, yeah, let's talk about game news. And get into it here. Tiefling Dances. Free Shrugs, who is the guy who does the animation, who has been a very busy person of late, said glad everyone likes the dances. More dances for Tieflings are on the way. For him, dances take the longest to finish. Still so much to do, and then he went back to do some more animating. So Tieflings have a dance, and I think the plan is to give them at least one more.
I do wish that because the first dance is kind of beautiful, elegant. Like I really like the first dances for both the male and female, but I kind of want an attitude dance because like Wood Elf gave like a lot of attitude in their dance. I really like their dances. It would be nice to have like an eloquent side and kind of like let's just go out and party kind of dance.
Sure. I have not seen the dances yet. I did, however, play with a tiefling scoundrel bard, so I got to see and hear the bard music and the animation there. It was I had two kind of reactions to the bard music for tiefling scoundrel. The first was that it was over way too fast. I almost wish that the songs took longer to do because it was very beautiful and it was really like I wanted to hear more of it, right? And the other one was that it wasn't very. It was very melodic and soothing, not nearly like I was. It had nothing to do with like the kind of Devil Went Down to Georgia vibe, kind of a like
Yeah,
fast paced music. It was very melodic and very pretty. So.
I was kind of hoping that there would be a couple of songs, kind of like how they have for the lute. you know how you
Mhm.
play a bard song and then you play another bard song and it changes kind of songs. And I was hoping that there would be a fiddle to violence. You know, what I mean, there's a difference between the music you play on a fiddle than you do on a violin.
There's definitely more than one, but they sound very similar. Um, but there's not like 20 of them or anything like that.
Yeah.
So, well, let's talk about Update 42, the Lamania preview. Primarily previewing quests and loot. This is the first iteration. Standard disclaimer: everything seen on the preview server Lamania is not final and is subject to change or removal before live release. So we got a couple of stuff. So 42 Sharn is expected to feature 9 story dungeons, 7 explorers, 1 explorer area, and 2 raids. This first preview contains 4 of the story dungeons and 4 of the explorer dungeons. Players can access them through when it comes back up. You can access through the test dojo, or they may have the full thing unlocked. I don't know. We'll see. But the ones that they released, they're all levels 15 and 32. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Most of them are 15 and 32. They did release one that was level 16 and 32. It gives us a good idea of the level range, which is what we were expecting based on. We theorized last week that based on the Sharn pre-orders and the pets that they gave us, being level 15 and level 30, that we were expecting level 32-ish and level 15-ish. So
I kind of expect if that it will be similar to pretty much all the expansions, right? Like in Menace of the Underdark, we had 21, 22, 23 chains. And then like Ravenloft, you know, went from 10, the second chain 11. For I'm talking about heroic levels. So
right.
I'm thinking most likely Sharn might go up to 17 on
I wouldn't be
normal.
surprised if they went up to 17. It'll probably, because they're breaking it up a little bit more. There may be less variance. I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell. Um, we'll have to see. But I would say 17 is probably my guess for the upper range. Um, I still haven't seen anything that says whether or not the raid is going to be available in heroics. My sense is it will not, but that's just kind of
Yeah.
based on past practices.
Well, not only that, you look at the loot preview in Lamania, the forum. They didn't when they listed the raid items, it just listed their legendary level range, not a heroic level range,
Right.
and it's really sad because I kind of miss heroic raids.
Yeah, but we also don't tend to. I mean, people don't tend to do as much raiding down there too. So I understand why they don't do it. But yeah,
Yeah,
it would be nice if there were, even if just have the heroic level, just so that people can experience it a little easier. Maybe I don't know. Um,
or maybe just make a 6-player raid. You know, like a raid that you only need 6 players.
they
Call
did
it a
that.
quest.
They did that once. It was called Spinner Shadows, and that's actually part of the design of that quest. Was they didn't want it to be a raid, but they kind of start. I think they started out like in that direction, and then decided they didn't want it to be a raid or something or they wanted it to be quote kind of raid like ish, but for 6 people, something to that effect. But
Yeah, I can see it.
um, there's a bunch of quest known issues that I'm not going to go through. Minor artifacts. So we got a little bit more information about these. It's a new designation for equipment items called minor artifact. The basic explanation is a piece of equipment with the minor artifact designation displayed on its tooltip is an extra powerful item that goes into one of your normal equipment slots. You can have a filigree slotted into it. Here's some of the details. Each minor artifact can only be equipped into a specific equipment slot. However, that slot differs from artifact to artifact. A character may only equip a single minor artifact regardless of slot. The power level of equipment effects on a minor artifact are higher than the other equipment items at the same minimum level. As a reference point, they did release the loot, and we'll kind of talk about it. I'm not going to go through all of the loot for a couple reasons. One, it's really in flux. They were changing. Linabel was changing things, taking ideas right and left. But to give you an idea of the power level difference, the stats on these items were 22, which is considerably higher than where we're at. Because I think 19 is the highest in the game at the moment, if I'm not mistaken.
I think the raid items in
Oh, that's right. They're
Ravenloft
20.
20.
They
Yeah.
go up to 20, right? Uh, so we're getting a little bit higher in that regards. A character can only equip a single minor artifact regardless of slot. The power level of equipment effects on a minor artifact we said are higher. We said that minor artifacts can be placed in the sentient weapon UI. Each minor artifact begins with one slot available. You do not need a sentient gem, nor can you slot a sentient gem into one. Minor artifacts can consume made items, just like sentient weapons. They get unlocking filigree slots costs half the XP than unlocking a filigree slot in sentient weapon costs. Each minor artifact has a different maximum filigree slots. That is total. It cannot be adjusted by consuming a sentient spark. However, all of the ones that will be available in Update 42 will have a maximum of 3 filigree slots, which means there's not going to take that much XP to unlock these, right?
Yeah, and I think I read something special about its like augment slots too. Not like how we get green, blue. I think I heard that it gets 3 augments. Am I wrong?
No, you're not. They have the all. So I don't want to say that that is part of the artifact system, but all of the artifacts that they are releasing with Sharn have 3 augments: yellow, green, and blue, which is a
That's
lot.
crazy.
Yeah. If they ever update the augment system and give us more options, it's going to be amazing, right?
Yeah, it would be. Sounds like every time we bring that up, they mention how hard of a job that would be, though, and it's kind of scary.
They are locked into this idea that they do not want to release new augments until they overhaul the augment system. But the augment system overhaul is a major process, and they have not done that work yet. My personal hope is now that they're kind of ramping down with the enhancement class balancy thing that they've been doing the last couple years, that'll kind of bubble to the top as the next big thing they need to do. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Because they do need to do it. And I mean, we've had 2 expansion. I mean, the filigrees are a good kind of alternative, I would say, but they're also not augments, and they're much smaller in what they do because they stack and stuff like that. So we've had 2. This will be the second expansion plus a whole bunch of other. So there's just no augments being released, and
Yeah.
that's
Well, it's
short.
been a while since they released one.
Yeah, that's really short shrifting augments just in general. Was it? Have they released one since Thunderhome?
Well, I believe the Festival Wisdom and Int from
Sure.
Night
Yeah.
Rebels is the last.
There haven't been many for a long time, which is unfortunate because it's a major point that gives gearing customization, and probably even worse at this point, when they do kind of fix it and give us new augments, you're gonna have a balancing issue.
Yeah, because if they eventually just update the augments for the modern kind of meta bonuses, like a level
Mm-hmm.
15 strength augment being +8 strength, it gets kind of overpowering. But really, all I want personally is them to lower Anthem's MO to just MO like 13 or 12.
I can tell you that a lot of people want to see healing amplification augments. I think that's
Freedom of
a
movement.
good one to go. Yeah, freedom of movement would be a possible one. There's a lot of different kind of like single ones you do. I I kind of suspect that the progression of things will be less than what you can get on an actual item. But insightful, like we only have insightful +2, and the minimum level on that is like 24. The
Yeah,
24
it's
or 28,
outrageous.
which relative to what you can get on other items is just completely out of whack, because you can get +3 at like level 10 or something like that. Like it's
Yeah, it's almost like they could save by deleting those
yeah,
augments
right.
like from the game because we don't need them.
No, and we need them to be updated so that they're closer in line to what, not to replace items, but to supplement something that's missing. Especially when we start getting into this gear calculus. Um, like I'll talk more about the Sharn loot, just kind of a general thing, but like I actually took a moment to send Linabelle a message that this is cool, this is really exciting. I hate you. The gear calculus is going to take me a year to figure out. Just so there's a lot of having a working augment system would really be a major benefit to players for sure.
I do like what they're doing with the Sharn placements, though. Like, if you look at
Mhm.
the DPS set, it's an armor, necklace, glove, or hand wraps if you're a monk. And I'm like, that's really good because most of the time I'm actually Kenneth crafting or using Mines of Tethramar armor or some armor. So, like, they left the cloak and the bracers open, which is a really good place for your mysterious item if you want a lot of heal amp while in heroics or whatever.
Sure.
And then there's a lot of good cloaks. There's a +8 charisma cloak with insightful and quality enchantment from Minds of Tethramar. There's a +8 strength +1 or 2 quality strength cloak. So like leaving that open allows you to do a lot of things with stats and placements. The belt being left open is great because the belt and the Minds of Tethramar, or whatever it's called, has a lot of double strike and good stuff in there. So like I felt like that was really beautifully done. The placement I totally like so far. The minor artifacts, if I could talk separately about that, I kind of wish I would go somewhere else. Like it would be overpowered and amazing if a simple artifact would just have the base, insightful, and quality of the same stat on it. Because then that would just be super worth the grind. You know what I mean? Like to just get rid of that stats needs out of your equipment, just having that on one item.
Sure. It might be. I don't know. I don't mind like having items that really spread some things around. The challenge here, Sharn has a lot of stuff that's really neat. Um, but there's a lot of like it's not going to be like at first glance you're not going to be able to like pull Sharn and Ravenloft sets and really put them together. They're going to be somewhat exclusive just from the
Yeah,
way that they slot the gear, the which slots things go in. Um, and like I was looking at so oh hey there's some nice bonuses for the tank stuff and then I started looking at it like if I go after this I'm gonna have to redo the whole set like the
yeah.
like
Every
top to bottom like stripping to the studs and building back up gear wise which is why I was giving a little bit of a hard time that the gear calculus is gonna be crazy.
yeah, I did notice that for the tank gear set. So I feel like the Sharn tank set is pretty strong, but it with the
it's
fact that you only need
fairly
three.
comparable. Well, there's a tank set in Ravenloft too, and the Sharn one is basically the Ravenloft plus a little bit extra, so it's a little bit higher. The stuff that's on those though is slightly different. The bonuses are slightly different. So that's kind of a thing to be aware of there. The Yeah, it's gonna be tricky. Like combine like mixing and matching Ravenloft and Sharn. I don't think it's gonna work so well, just because a lot of stuff that's on the Sharn stuff you can get all the same stuff, but they're in different combinations.
Yeah. Well, like I feel like it's meant to disrupt the three-piece sets of Ravenloft more so than the adherent of the Mist set.
I would say that it's probably more likely to say that they're supposed to be exclusive. Like they don't want you to be able to have both. That was kind of the design
Yeah.
that I kind of picked up on. Um,
It really
and
blocks a
that
lot of
I
three-piece sets.
I think that has less to do with the tank set actually than it does to do with the other sets. The Silent Avenger set in particular. Um, if you were able to stack that with some of these other ones, like that would be too much. And I understand why they did that. And that's not uncommon. That's actually pretty common, in fact,
Yeah.
of how they tend to do. Like we get a set for one pack, and then the next set, a couple packs later, we get a bunch more sets, and they kind of tend to be a little bit more exclusive. Like you can't fit them both in, but one might be better than the other, and there's a lot of things to consider. And the set bonuses just make it even more complicated. Like I said, gear
Yeah.
calculus.
Gear calculus. It doesn't help that both their sets are rely on armors too,
That's
for the
that's
three-piece.
that's very much intentional, I'm sure. Before we get too far off of the track of the minor artifacts, I want to finish a couple of the points that they put in there. Um, One is that a minor artifact cannot be consumed by a sentient weapon or another minor artifact. The filigree slotted in your equipped minor artifact count towards the set bonus of filigree slotted in your sentient weapon. The same filigree slotted in your equipped minor artifact and your sentient weapon will not stack with each other, but both will count as a set bonus. So if you pick something that's got dexterity +1 from Deadly Rain is the example they give, you still only get +1 dexterity, but you get 2 set pieces for your set bonuses there. So there you go. They say that essentially the minor artifact system, players will choose one high-powered item to be the cornerstone of their gearing layout, and then will fill it out with filigree in order to expand their available filigree set bonuses. It all sounds really fun. The minor artifact, I think it's another wrench in the gear calculus for sure. Although thankfully, the one that my tank wants, which is the hardest by far, my tank is the hardest one to gear for. Partly because I don't really play a DC caster very much, which is I think those two builds are like the hardest two to gear for because you really gotta dial in a bunch of the stuff in those. But the minor artifact my tank wants is in a slot that is very much underutilized currently. So, yay. There you go. The loot. I want to jump in on some. So we kind of started talking about the loot. I also want to mention. Crex's Pendragon mentioned in the chat that the damage augments need an update. Yes, that is also true. The augment system as it stands now just needs a complete overhaul to update into, and I still say like they should be lower than the actual loot that you can get at level, but they need to be brought up to be somewhat comparable, at least competitive. Like we mentioned in the insightful problem. Loot. So Sharn has a lot of items. There's a ton of them. I think it took him like 6 or 7 posts just to get all the stuff in there. There's multiple set items. Again, I am not going to. We're not going to go through them. We probably won't ever actually go through all of them. We'll hit highlights that there's stuff that kind of stands out to us. But with the loot, I really want to get across for people. This is changing rapidly. They posted some stuff. And she had already changed. Linda Bell had already made some changes. People put in a lot of suggestions. Some of them really great. Some of them less great. But she was taking a lot of feedback. And if you go through the dev tracker, there were probably 20 posts of her saying, "I love this idea. Changed." But they did not update the original list, which is another reason why I'm not going to do it because that list is completely out of date, and I don't have time to go through and mix and match all that stuff up. But we'll kind of give you some of the highlights about some of the loot stuff that we want to mention here. Sharn features a return of the nearly finished, which is the House Cannith, not to be confused with Cannith Crafting, to allow customization to certain items. Some of the ingredients used in the previous incarnation of nearly finished will be usable here in Sharn, and some of the ingredients found in Sharn will be usable in the original nearly finished, which is an interesting way to say that. Because it seems like does that mean that you can't introduce a new ingredient to use in the can of stuff because unless you're redesigning their crafting recipes, right? So it sounds like just it'll be the same ingredients, I guess. I think.
I don't really know because for instance, the nearly finished gear from before was already set. So like you have a glove that's nearly finished, and you unlock their potential. They're all going to be the same. You can't put displacement on these gloves and then swimming on these gloves. It was just you unlock their potential. So it depends. So like I'm pretty sure it's going to be either similar to that, or they're going to start adding stuff just like the helms from or the items from the House Jarasco quest, where you can just start adding displacement guards and all that. I don't know. Well, I guess we're just gonna have to see it when it comes
out. See, they did also say though. So one of the FAQs they put out was, I happen to have several thousand old House Cannith crafting ingredients already. It's not a question, but they were saying, don't worry. If you've got a ton of old House C stuff, you can make some headway into Sharn's crafting, but you won't be able to finish anything without actually getting into Sharn itself. Not shocking, but there you go. Sharn raids will be tier 4, a step higher than tier 3. That was fast. Didn't take them long to get to tier 4, did it? The raid items will be level 29, but tier 3 was 28. So that'll be interesting. No information about what that means for tomes. I hope they kind of put that out just because I think it's nice information to have. Also, it would be nice to know if you can actually get the universal tomes, which maybe this would be a good place for them.
Yeah,
But,
it would be.
we'll see. No trinkets. Why no trinkets? There are no trinkets in Sharn, so future packs can greatly expand on them, similar to how Ravenloft had no helms and future packs focused on them. Future pack? Did the pack... I don't know if it was really packs. Definitely the pack after it was all about helms, but...
At the Age of Madness or whatever.
Yeah, it was all like there was a stat for each, a helm for each stat kind of thing.
And then the 12 quests, yeah, from White Plume Mountain had a bunch of helms.
I guess that's true. They were lower level helms, but yeah, they did. How many items per set? All the sets are 3-piece items in the Sharn set, which I like a lot better than 5-piece sets. What bonus type are the set bonuses? Artifact. Therefore, not stacking with Slave Lords and most of Ravenloft's set bonuses. Not surprising. Let's see. Some other stuff to mention. The icons are not final. Most of the appearances have not been hooked up. There's a smattering of non-standard effects that have not been completed. Augment slots on shields are missing. Set bonuses will apply the wrong effect. There's a whole bunch of stuff missing here. But we kind of talked about it a little bit. Anything else you want to say about the loot?
I didn't look at the quick changes, but I really enjoyed how they had heal lamp and the armor and the DPS set, because if you recall Ravenloft, you kind of had to fit your own dodge and heal lamp and your armor. Well, you get it like an artifact bonus to armor piercing, I think. Oh no, that's helpless damage. There was a lot of things that you're leaving out if you went like the 3-piece Silent Avenger set and a 5-piece Adherent set. You something had to have been sacrificed just for you to fit in everything. And now that there's just 3-piece sets, and they just leave room for you to just fit everything, and they have a lot of things they overlooked before. So I hope they keep towards that path.
Yeah, it all looks really great. Like I said, it's exciting stuff. The gear calculus is going to be immensely difficult to figure out for my tank. The other characters I'm not as worried about. But we'll see. Want to mention Sharn on Lomania will have at least one more preview. The second preview is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, April 16th through Thursday, April 18th. Tentatively scheduled to contain all of the content in a loot release with Update 42, including all of the story dungeons and all the explorer dungeons, the cogs, wilderness area, first Sharn raid, quest loot, raid loot, minor artifacts, and the new filigree. If you got a raid group in particular, they'd love if you could try to wrangle them to provide feedback during preview 2. One other thing I remembered about the loot, the biggest thing that I kind of saw from people in my circles, the caster set, like the DC kind of caster set, doesn't have medium and heavy armor, which I agree that's a big oversight, I think.
Huge. Because like I'm running a tiefling sword. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, go for it.
And it doesn't take much just to dip in Eldritch Knight to get medium armor with no spell failure. It really doesn't. If you're just focusing on one savant tree in your racial tree, and then you can just sprinkle some Eldritch Knight for some defenses. And to be honest, it would be nice to have something for DC or even Evocus that wear higher than light armor.
Yeah, and especially the biggest problem that kind of the people that I run with had is if you look at some of the raids that they're designing and killing time, they're very, you need a lot of MRR in them. Like there's Linabelle made a post about this a while back. There's two kind of defensive mechanisms, and you can turn this in terms of physical damage or elemental damage. There's mitigation and there's avoidance. Evasion is avoidance. MMR would be the mitigation. We're talking about magical damage and stuff. And the fact of the matter is casters don't get evasion generally. DC casters usually aren't running with it. So your only real avoidance is to not get hit, but they're designing content in raids in particular with so much damage that's mitigated by MRR, having a cap of the cap from light and no armor for casters is really debilitating in those kind of raids. Like you just having run killing time on a couple of harder difficulties and stuff. Like there's a big difference in people that bring a character that has an MRR cap and those that don't. I mean, it's starkly different.
Yeah.
And if you're going to design content like that, you can't pigeonhole everybody into light armor, right? Like I understand that characters that are using evasion and stuff, like they have that armor, fine. Like that's a major class feature. It's very lower base, but there's no reason to pigeonhole cast, especially if you're giving them the tools, like you said, to overcome wearing heavier armor.
Yeah. That was my complaint for Ravenloft. The caster set was robe or a docent version, a belt and gloves, and I was thinking,
Even the
well, what
DPS set in that was light armor too, right?
there was no love for the diversity. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, I like this goes back to back when we used to say the Warforged was like the best caster race because you can choose adamantine body
Mm-hmm.
and whatever docent you know. So, but if you're doing like an R5 or R1 to be more realistic, any Strahd raid or whatever, uh, being reconned or having to focus on heal amp on a Warforged just so you can have your MRR up high enough to take
Mm-hmm.
an electric bolt is pretty sad. It's like it's a really we're being shepherded into a corner here on casters and raids.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. I know Arcot it's a really big thing for him because he tends to favor classes that get hit by it more, and I do too. The melee class guys that I tend to play more are a rogue and a monk. I have a fighter. I kind of enjoy the rogue and the monk a little bit more. They can do more stuff. But there's a big difference in their survivability when you start talking about raids and are using a lot of MRR defense. So they need to do something there. And not having at least a medium armor. But really, I don't understand. Like every other set has multiple. Like they have every version of armor that you can want. You want to be an outfit, fine. You want to be heavy armor, fine. You can go anywhere in between, except for that one group, which is really disappointing.
Yeah, and it totally like for instance like Death Domain clerics that can get a really high necro DC
Yeah,
is like, oh, so you're stuck in a robe. And but then it like I could kind of see where they're coming from. Like if you're DC casting, you're kind of like um Big Papa and freaking are like legendary sweepers because your insta kills are bomb. So maybe you should be, you know,
no.
not getting hit. But then again, that's not where the casters are all the time. If they're doing R1 raids, elite raids, and it doesn't save them there. You know what I mean? Like,
When you have that many environmental effects going on, like RSO and Killing Time have a bunch of
hmm
magical effects that MRR helps you with, and the damage is not evadable either, right? Like so, there's a
yeah.
yeah. I don't know. I think we've already gone too far down the rabbit hole. Oops. So we'll move on. But that was kind of the biggest standout for me that I think needs to get fixed with the loot pass, the loot stuff there. Sharn and Season Pass. How are those two going to interact? So, Season Pass holders will retain all new features released in 2019 and 2020 that are free to VIPs, even if their VIP subscription lapses. In the case of Update 41.4 and 42, Tiefling is the only feature free to VIPs being released that Coco Majobo was aware of. This means that Season Pass holders will retain access to Tiefling even if they allow their VIP subscription to lapse at some point in the future. So, something worth noting. That may also change your calculus when you're trying to figure out what expansion pack to get. Because I think like the base expansion pack, then if you have the Season's Pass, you're paying $40 for the content because you already have the Tiefling.
Exactly.
So, it may become more worth it to go up higher if you're going to start talking about dollars versus stuff. So, or perhaps more likely waiting for
The DDO point buy.
waiting for the point buy. Yeah, so something to consider. Um, bugs. A couple of bugs I wanted to mention. Uh, so favor not being granted with update 41. They poked around trying to get a second round attempt for the couple favor feats that inconsistently were not applied. The determination was that they did not have anything approaching the time to properly diagnose why those few had not worked, implement a second attempt, and test those changes. There are currently no plans that they're aware of to grant those few missing retroactive favor feats. It's not that it's impossible or it's time. Everything's focused on Sharn deadlines right now. That's why it's not happening. So hopefully when we get past that, you'll start talking about we might see another attempt at this. So let's see performance. This was funny. So they have identified an issue causing a performance drop when the barred version of Hold Person or the barred version of Gust of Wind are cast. It should be fixed for the next time they patch. To which someone said, "That sounds neat, but Gust of Wind is not a bard spell."
Yeah, it's true.
Which is true. Until Star wrote back, "This is true. A bard version of the spell does exist, though, and if one managed to cast it, which may be possible via scrolls, they'll need to double check the scroll structure. It would cause performance issues. As it goes, there are quite a few versions of spells that exist that aren't player accessible. My guess there's some place that you might see that would be monster bards. They're quote bard monsters. Could be casting a bard version of this. It got a little bit more interesting when Stillstar mentioned that this was tangentially related to warlocks, to which people were like, "Well, what do you mean warlocks?" And he tried to reassure people by saying that it's nothing that warlocks are doing, but there's like this weird relationship with warlocks or something. It was kind of amusing. There you go. Let's see. Bonus days, double daily dice through today, which is fantastic, which means this is usually when I start rolling high on all the servers I don't have characters that I play on, which is basically most of them. And on my primary server, I start rolling really low. That's usually about how that works.
Because I rolled 2 ones today on my gold and silver.
That's nice. Well done. Store news. The Falconry Universal Enhancement Tree is now available in the DDO store. Wow, that took a while. But hopefully, and they were having some problems with that. I don't know if I didn't see anything that said that they fixed it, but it wasn't showing up for some people. So hopefully they get that fixed.
Just in the nick of time for those people who are still trying to get Titan raids together to get that for favor.
Titan raids? Oof. Let's see. The sales. Improve your character. You get 25% off of stat tomes and skill tomes. You can also get tomes of learning, enhancement trees. I'm assuming that would be the universal enhancement trees. Kind of goodbye.
Like Falconry?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's actually on sale or not, but if it is, that's nice. Here, first time it's available, you can get it 25% off. Cool.
That'd be great.
Yeah. The weekly coupon gets you a lasting aid potion times fine with the coupon code AIDPOT now through April 11th. Can I just say that's a really funny one to have as a lasting potion? Because it's like, what, maybe 15 hit points? Temporary hit points?
I always find it funny when they do stuff like lasting aid or lasting acid resistance 20, and I'm like, I don't really need.
Sure.
Maybe there's definitely people out there that will use these, like that don't have resources. But me,
Actually, it now occurs to me that my monk that I'm currently reincarnating, I was running Zorian Cypher and I died, so I lost my ship buffs. And at one point, I was going into the end fight, I was like, oh, I should drink an acid resistance potion. And I went over to click the level 31, or the 30 resistance ones, but I'm not high enough level to use them yet.
oh wow.
I could have used one of the lasting acid potions that I got with the last coupon code that was in my inventory that I completely didn't even think about using. So there you go.
No, when I first came back, because I was on a 3-year, well, I wouldn't say a hiatus, I just didn't have a computer. I came back and the first coupon was for radiant spell power potions, and Warlock was so hot during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, this is relevant, this is dope. And then the next potion was like 5% fire resistance, 25 stack or something like that. I was like,
So low.
no.
Yeah. I mean, not everyone's really useful, but they have different variances of usefulness. So, let's talk about community news. We have the 327th Chronicle. Community spotlights this week were to check out the latest D&D night on DDO stream, the Waterdeep Dragon Heist, episode 8. Say yes to the quest. You can watch the Waterdeep dwarves and +1 drow discover the truth about the dwarven clan of Porkhammer and an uninvited guest at Trollskull Manor. The other spotlight is that the Munchkin Summer Games are going to be starting. That's on Kyber. So 2019, I believe they start May 31st, I think. End of May, as I recall. The Chronicle comment. This could be dangerous. How long was the longest raid you've ever done? Well, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Well, you go ahead, because I have to think.
So, the longest raid that I've ever done was so long that I went to bed before it got finished. It was Temple of Deathworm, and this was back before Reaper. And I'm pretty sure it was kind of the end. It had just come out. It was the end game at the time, and we were running it on Elite, which at the time was really hard, a lot harder. And lag was an issue. And I think after about 3 hours, we had gotten to the point that we had found the phylactery, so we just had to beat her down and everything. But by that point, we realized that somehow we had got Arglorasa stuck behind, into a spot where she wasn't getting out and we couldn't damage her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so we probably spent about 20 minutes trying random things. And by this time, it's like, hey, guys, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to go play with power tools in the morning. I'm going to bed. And apparently they did get her out an hour later.
Hour?
Yeah. This was like a 4 or 5 hour raid.
Well, mine's is really actually not. It's actually surprising how simple it was. It was a Von 5.
Oh
I
my.
was, yeah, and it's quite a story. I was trying to do a video because I was just starting to make content, and some guy joined, and we wiped. There was chain 2 of Matu, and then he's like, "I want to run a Von 5," and I'm like, "Okay." I passed him the star. He said I wanted to run. It turns out, right when we get to the wheels, that he never ran this before,
Oh my.
and so I spent at least 3 hours on the right side of North waiting for him to figure out the wheels. It was legitly 3 hours. I had to break the video because he gave me permission to record it. This is going to be an episode never posted because it ended 4 hours 52 minutes in Von 5,
Oh.
and we redid the North 3 times.
I've redone the North that many times without being in there for an hour.
Yeah,
Ouch.
no, it was bad.
Yeah.
Thank God I don't remember names.
Yeah, let's not put the names of that one out there. Um, the guild for the week. The Society is a Sunday raiding guild on the Galanda server. It's recruiting 4 more players to join their team. Interesting. So, more of a specific request for players, but if you play on Galanda and you like to raid on Sundays, check them out. Fan site news. We got a shout out for episode 553. We were talking about Sharn pre-orders and some other stuff, including Reaper. A quick note on that. After the show, Arcot and I had a conversation saying that, boy, we need to have a longer show to talk about where Reaper is right now. So that's going to be coming down the pipeline. We're going to probably get a bunch of people. I'm not even sure what it's going to look. It may need to be 2 different sets of people or something. I don't know. And we're going to really dive into how Reaper is doing and what thumbs up, thumbs down, and really, I'll probably mine some questions from the community, and we're gonna really debate and talk about Reaper mode and where it stands today. So,
Oh, I'm definitely down for that. I have over 2 years, like
Yeah,
just grinding Reaper experience.
I have a feeling that the trick there is the biggest trick I think is going to be for me to find people that don't to talk people into coming on the show that don't really like Reaper or don't really care about Reaper as a counterpoint.
I
I think it's
actually
kind of tricky.
bump into those people a lot. I could probably find you someone.
Oh, I know some. I just don't know if they're going to want to come on the show to talk about it. Anyways, so there's going to be a bigger conversation about Reaper mode coming in the not too distant future, hopefully. See other stuff for the fan site news from the Chronicle. Brock and Friends now with 33% more friends. Cool. Fridays on Ice at episode 120 with Bachelor. There's Bard Life with Doug Glendower, who I think just went past 2 years with their show, so that's pretty cool. A Trick of the Trail from the Return of the House of Grouse. You can watch Damsel's DDO play. I think that's the episode that I was playing with them on. There's also DDO Sunday with Alex and Lynn, a static group running Reaper and Veil from Mickey's Delirium. You can watch There Never Was a Good Warforged or Bad Peace with, oh boy, with DDO PL folks. I'm trying to figure out what that title is in reference to. I got nothing. Let's see, DDO Wiki Talk with Technical 13. And you can read the latest from BioBreak. That's Sip's blog, and it's probably it's he ran the pit again, and is firmly saying that he is never going to run the pit again. He said he actually posted on Twitter that never again will he darken. Or I offered on Twitter to take him through a nice, easy 30-minute run of the pit, and he responded by saying that never again will he darken the door of that quest. So I told him to bring a torch. He didn't respond. That's okay. Anyways, other stuff. Mickey's Delirium had a post about Sharn bundle order. Strim Tom got a chance to interview SSG. He was able to visit with SSG while he was there for PAX East. And so we interviewed a bunch of the devs. He had Linabelle and Severlin, Nobob, and Steelstar. It's nothing that's... It's only 10 minutes. It's nothing that's like really earth-shattering. There's not really any news, but just kind of asking them questions about why they picked Tiefling Scoundrel, what their favorite classes are, that kind of stuff.
So, Cordovon, what's your shoe size?
He wasn't on it, actually. But it was fun. Nice little fun thing. Also, MMO Central interviewed Severlin at PAX East, and I pulled a few things out of this. They asked him about the racial variant, and this is not set in stone, but he said the current thinking is it might be Drow, because there's a Corvair Drow from Eberron. They're thinking about doing a Forgotten Realms treatise on Drow that would be different, which would be an interesting choice.
I think it was your show 552, right, when he explained that variants were going to be generic versions of those specific races that we have that you can put in any setting. And Forgotten Realm Drow or Underdark Drow is kind of like universal, I guess.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically what I remember that part of the reason why they want to do this is to kind of update the race, but without like it both in look and design and stuff, but without really borking anyone's existing characters. But it's one of those things that the more you think about it, like a Corvair Drow or Forgotten Realms version of Drow would be a good option. It certainly makes a lot more sense than doing Dorger, which again I say is a separate race entirely, depending on where you are. But
actually, I know a lot of High Lords that would be very excited to hear that they're doing Forgotten Realms Drow, because that's something that we've been wanting for years.
There's a lot of facial stuff, a lot of kind of cosmetic-y stuff you could do with those too.
Well, hopefully they get the Menace of the Underdark Drow mohawks and stuff.
Ooh, there you go.
That would be nice.
Face paint too.
Oh, definitely.
He talked about a new class. They're asking about a new class. He said probably the end of the year it will. Thinking is it'll be a utility casting type class. He said, someone said, I would not be surprised if it was a class that made use of all sorts of gadgets and magical things like filters and bottles and other such things. To which I'm like, what? I don't know any. Yeah, then maybe, probably, I guess not, because we have that already.
I had a theory and it was based off of the Inquisitive, because the Inquisitive was an Eberron specific prestige in 3.5, right? And then it just came back in Xanathar's Guide to Everything for 5th edition as a rogue path. But so was Samurai, a actual core class specific to Eberron, and it was just brought back to Xanathar's Guide of Everything in 5th edition. But I guess that's thrown out the window if it's a utility class.
Yeah. Someone suggested Samurai in the comments a couple weeks ago that I really liked. Kind of thinking, designing it or conceptualizing it as a kind of similar to Monk in terms of using key, but in a different mechanic and a different kind of build.
Yeah.
So we'll see what we get there. This one was specific to Lotro, but he talked about adding. They're looking at exploring increasing difficulty settings and expanding their difficulty settings in Lotro. And someone said this, and I want to read this because I think it's similar to what they said about DDO and difficulty, and I think it informed. I have a feeling that they're very similar in how they think about this. But he said there isn't anyone who thinks that adding health and damage directly, and that being the only reason that it's more difficult, would be compelling. So we're going to be adding more mechanics. We've been playing with some things, and we still have a lot of iteration. But right now, certain creatures, we think we're going to have a mechanic where they can be imbued by the Shadow of Sauron, and they'll get additional abilities or specific resistances or something that you'll have to change your playstyle around.
Champion.
Yeah, right? Definitely sounds like champions, doesn't it? For instance, if you kill one and it buffs all the other creatures, then that's something you'll have to kill last. New Reaper, maybe?
Reaper. He did say that R6 and up, he would like to add new Reapers with different strategies.
Yep. And if another one does a lot of damage, that's something you probably want to kill first, or at least stun. So there will be different creatures, but the rare powers will be dependent on the tech, a lot of it, because randomly spawning other elites within the content is something that they're examining right now. So he doesn't want to say too much unless they have to change direction.
I actually had you ever the Age of Rage or Age of Madness chain in the House J. They have those exploder tyrant guys, right?
Yeah.
You kill them and they. I kind of thought it would be interesting if there was like a bomb reaper where if you kill it last, it won't explode. You know, wouldn't that be weird?
I think that'd be interesting, sure. Or even if you just when you kill it, it's gonna go boom. I was thinking one that when it dies, it does. If you run Lord of Blades or Killing Time in Lord of Blades section there, the hounds there do a buff that increases resistance to all the monsters it lands on. I was thinking a Reaper that when it dies, it does that. Would be a decent one, but.
Or like a gooey reaper that makes you sticky and leaves puddle of acid on the more you damage it, so you kind of want to like handle it differently.
Sure, interesting. The last thing I pulled from the interview is several talked about server up so he was talking about 64-bit client, and what he said was the server updates certainly helped. I think it'll be easier on the players with higher end computers once we have the 64-bit client. We will be able to make better use of their system resources, including their graphics memory card, so that will happen as well. And the reason I pulled that out was that's about as much as I've heard or seen about hinting at what kind of server work they did that caused 3-4 day downtime. I don't remember anymore.
Yeah. It was 3 days because they gave 4 VIP days out.
So that may give an insight into what was kind of involved with that. Other stuff really quick. D&D Net and DDO streams Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you're listening to this show live, when we're done, hopefully in the next half an hour or so, take a break, go use the restroom, come back and watch that on twitch.tv/DDO stream. If you are listening to this recorded, don't worry, we're posting all that stuff. I am also working through, I got sidetracked because of a few technical issues and trying to figure out how to do a couple of things. But I am working on getting the past shows out of the Hero of Battle Rise, which is the original series. So working on doing that. There's a little bit of tricks involved with getting the timing right because I don't want to overshadow what's currently going on. But I think I'm up to the 6th episode of Hero of Battle Rise, which is again the original group, has been posted. We have a YouTube playlist on DDO stream or DDO Unlimited's YouTube page. There's a playlist that has them all, so you can check them all out there. Um, but it's a lot of fun. That's what our Fantasy Grounds is our sponsor for that. We play on Fantasy Grounds. You can see what that looks like. It's tabletop D&D virtually, and we're twitching it because people love it and it's been a lot of fun. So
I enjoy watching it, to be honest.
yeah,
That's why I'm into Critical Role and stuff. Is just watching people make a story in front of you is like the best thing in the world.
sure. I am definitely having to adapt my own DM style a little bit to like the nature of it being live, because I think the things that I tend to players have told me that I tend to excel at as a DM don't necessarily make for good D&D watching. I'm not really sure. I have to ask some people about that. Anyways, also DDOCast news: DDO Splat will be playing Tuesdays 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, at least for another couple of weeks. I think this week we're gonna do a raid, probably Baba's Hut. I'm not entirely positive on that yet, but I think that's kind of the tentative plans here. So
Turn in and watch out and find out.
see how many times we get smoked. Anyways, lightning post. Couple things I wanted to people wrote in. Talking about our discussion from last week and talking about Sharn pre-orders. Fuzzy Duck wrote in, he's enjoying the pre-order thingies so far. Not tried the Inquisitive much, but Tiefling is a lot of fun. Their racial abilities are very nice and they look awesome. It's a shame that the small horns were removed, though. You'd rather liked the more understated look. I agree. We mostly agreed on that last week. Shield Guardian is nice. Not very strong on the attack, but just having a big meat shield decoy that can self-heal is really useful and naturally will pair very well with an Inquisitive, who'll be firing off diplomacy all the time. It makes sense their spells will be stuff to make them harder to kill. That's a sneak... I don't know if they intended this, but that was a really sneaky, clever thing that they did, giving a Shield Guardian with Inquisitive for that reason right there.
Yeah. Well, I also feel like it's a blessing for all those Warforged lovers and Bladeforged lovers because
Sure.
at 15 and up, you have a hireling that can heal you now,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're trying to do Reaper.
Yeah, no, it's pretty neat. Let's see, the High Society cosmetic is nice, but personally not really a fan of the Inquisitive one. I think I'm the reverse, to be honest.
I'm with the former. I really love the High Society stuff.
Really? I don't know. I don't know if I'm really sold on either one, to be honest. The Peacock pet is really nice, really good, but for me, it's the Bloodhound that's the real star. I like that it's only the medium package for him, so there's likely to be more good dogs running around with their ears flapping in the wind.
You would think that if you made a Clockwork or Warforged mechanical Peacock, that you would do everything that's great about it and leave out that really annoying cry that it does. Everything about that pet's beautiful, but then as soon as it opens its mouth and does that baby cry thing that it yells, I'm like, no, go away.
The Universal Action Tome is great, even if your build never already included universal trees. You can take just the first point, get something handy. Inquisitive +1 attack and dialogue skills is one you'd have by default from the package, but the most useful in his opinion is Falconry for the bird, who'll give you +2 to spot. It's a good choice. The action point, universal action point tome price seems especially high. Yeah, we talked about that. And they're a lot more restricted too. There's more racial action points available to earn in game already, though. So reincarnations, and they're probably not seen as big impact on balance. They don't contribute to any potential dual capstone issue. Yeah. Reaper's a tricky one. Fuzzy Duck writes, I run R1 or 2 from time to time, but not all that often. My most experienced character only has about 6 or 7 Reaper action points. So while they're getting a boost, it's not really enough to make up the difference from EE to R1. But can totally see how when the APs start piling up, the bonuses really start to outweigh the difficulty increase. The best I can come up with for a way to handle that is to have some ability suppression. So on R1 and 2, only cores plus first tier abilities apply, and 3 and 4 you get second tier abilities. That probably would have been a good way to do it if they'd have done it to begin with.
Yeah.
Although, I don't know, the healing penalty is still a big penalty. Mostly because a lot of people, that's how a lot of people play, is self-healing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, okay, but okay, so right, okay. but I also, if you're just doing low skull, for instance, it's not that bad in R1,
No, it's not.
but that's coming from someone that has 180 heal amp at level
Hmm.
18 right now, or level 15 and up. That's when I had 180. Yeah, I actually self heal for over 200 on R1s, so I still can self heal and do low Reaper. In R5s, I'm still hitting just below 100 with 180 heal amp. So it's more time consuming. Like I'll take care of a group of mobs and then I'll pause, put my triple positive heal amp item on my offhand, a heal scroll on my main hand, and just sit there for a while self healing. It's gonna take a while, but you can do it. You just have to be patient.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that like the R1 becoming easier than EE at a certain point is wrong. I completely agree that it is, that it that does happen. So, um, Keldar Hawk says he completely disagrees with Arcot on the Tieflings. His only wish was an option for more blue ones, but oh well. That said, the enhancer trees seem lacking on both. So this is saying that he likes the look of them. Dis also says, I think Tieflings look great. I do think it's unfortunate they remove the smaller horns, though, especially since all the enemy Tieflings have them. I kind of think about
Yeah,
the smaller horns. Freya wrote that I have found the transportation to Barovia has been exceptionally convenient. I teleport from the ship right next to the entrance to Ravenloft, and from there go to whichever tavern I wish to travel to. Sharn, however, I believe will be slightly more difficult to transport to if it is located on that ship in the harbor. I'm still wrestling with which pack to purchase. I don't feel the pressure to make up my mind right now. I still have a full month to continue to torture myself with the pros and cons. Don't torture yourself
yeah.
too much. uh, Freya also said a good conversation on Reaper. Agree with Arcot on this. I spoke out about power creep before Reaper was implemented, but they went with the system that we have. It definitely continues to widen the gap from Uber players to normal players. I choose to get with the system in play and am playing Reaper and getting those benefits. The more we widen the gap from new players to veteran players, the harder it will be to retain newer players. Yes.
I totally agree with
Yep.
that settlement because there's a lot of people that since I started my YouTube channel come up and ask me questions, and I don't want to sound like a doo doo head, but like sometimes they'll ask me something and I'm like, oh wow, that's just so simple. Like I don't have that issue, and I call it player privilege because like one, I have history and I
Hmm.
grind a lot. So like when someone says like, how do you get more than 10 AC, and I'm like, protection, like I can tell by just talking to people that there is a huge gap between me, who has no job and has plenty of time for DDO, and people who probably has more real life points than they do Reaper points.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest struggle that this game has and has had for a long time is been a lot of mechanics that they've added that I think are great. Like reincarnation, this game would not be here if reincarnation did not exist. Period.
Amen.
You know, I firmly believe that Reaper would not be as popular as it is if you didn't have the Reaper trees. The um as several kind of put it, and perhaps not the most eloquently, the design glitch there is those things are really popular and they expand the life and what people can do and how much they play and thus how much they spend, which keeps the game going. But at the same time, those create a wider gap between new players and those players. And even not even necessarily even new players, right? Like I would say
Busy
that
players.
yeah, like I think most people who listen to the show and know me would agree that I'm probably in the power gamer quote classification. Uh, but I think there is now I am much farther away from like the power level that a lot of people that I play with have achieved relative to mine since Reaper came out. Like that gap between what I've achieved in terms of character building, what they've achieved in character building has widened a lot more since you started getting racial reincarnation and Reaper trees. So even
Yeah,
amongst people that have been playing for 13 years and have a bunch of the stuff in the game, there it's definitely even widening that into the spectrum too.
it's very interesting because and I've noticed this recently. When I came back to the game, it was just before June 2017. and around the end of June till now, I've been doing nothing but mid to highest school. Almost 94 Reaper points in. I have just lost my racial completionist. I'm 17 lives away from having triple everything, right? So this is a little over 2 years of work, and I have people that I've been TRing with, playing with, that they're either too busy or the real life kind of stops them. They've been playing just as much as me, but they're still in their 40s and 50s in Reaper points. They're nowhere close to racial completionists, and so there's a lot of factors. I wish you could compartmentalize it, but really it's a spectrum
Hmm.
of issues that comes into separating average players, casual players, and then the power gamers.
And even like I said, even in that power gamer section, like I think that the difference in power level of players and time and investment there has really expanded a
Yeah,
lot since we got the trees.
totally agree.
And we'll talk about this more when we talk about Reaper. But again, I think if the Reaper trees didn't exist, I don't think Reaper would be as big of a hit as it is, or at least
Yeah,
people wouldn't be running it as much. And like, why would you? People wouldn't be running a lot of content regularly on R5. They just wouldn't. Like, why? You don't need to challenge yourself.
there's no point.
If the only thing is to challenge yourself, you're not gonna do that every day. So I don't know. Again, we'll get into more of that on another podcast. See, Ron said, I wish they would give an option in the packs to either get all of the free stuff they are offering or get an equivalent amount of points so I can just buy what I need. As of now, I won't be purchasing in the pre-order because there's really nothing in them that I would use. I mean, the bag would be nice, but I'm not going to spend $40 for a bag. The difference between a standard without bag and collector's with bag. Yeah, I mean, definitely. If you don't want a lot of the cosmetic-y stuff, or you don't care about the pets that are there, I think that's kind of what he's speaking to. So
To be honest, okay, so my views of the pre-bundles is that I felt like Ravenlofts was a little bit better, but it was never for me. There's a lot of reasons why you would buy a pre-bundle. For me, my biggest thing is SSG's revenue. I pay I pay as much as I can when I can, so this game can be a freaking bombshell every time they update.
sure, and we appreciate that. Thank you. Zach says, after coming back to the game from a 3-year break, Reaper being new, he's disappointed to find that most people don't seem to quest too much from level 20 to 30. Instead, it's tons of explorers. Also, not too much R1 LFMs for the most part, grouping up in this level range too. But pretty much it's the only LFMs from 1 to 20. Yeah, and I think he's touching on a a dynamic that's really been changing of late, right? That people going from 20 to 30, there's a lot of XP in the Slayer areas, and it ramps up pretty fast, and it's pretty easy. It's
I
also
went
easy
from
to bike.
21. Yes, exactly. I went 21 to 30 in one day, and my routine is King's Forest, T Home, Necrophore, and Barovia Slayers. And so each Slayer is about two Slayers zones. It's about 3 levels if you max them out, I figured.
Sure.
So that's 6 levels right there. Am I doing math right? Yeah, but that's about 6 levels
I don't
right
know,
there.
but you do King's Forest, the Grim Portal, and then Thunderholm, uh, Orchard, Ravenloft to a lesser extent, but it's becoming more popular. I mean,
Yeah, and then you just like do E-star challenges, R1 dailies. That's two different more levels. That's 6, 7, 8, and then you just throw on a chain or something, and then you're done.
yeah, it's definitely gotten easier to level from 20 to 30. That's for sure. Um, all right, there you go. There's the news. There's the lightning post. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna get into racial reincarnation. So this is continuing our series on past life prioritization. So what do we mean by that? How do you prioritize which lives you should take? We've already talked about specifically heroics. We've also kind of talked about the different types of reincarnation. Those are previous shows. So we're not going to get into should I do heroic versus racial versus iconic and in what order we did that. That was a different one.
I was there.
Yeah, you were. what we're going to talk about right now is we're going to go specifically into racial reincarnation. More specifically, how does it work? Which ones should you get? In what order? That kind of a thing. This one's going to be a lot easier than Heroics. I mean, Heroics, I think we broke into like 3 or 4 episodes. Racial reincarnation is pretty simple. Each race, the first time you get a skill, you get +1 to a skill. It's really not that exciting. The second time, you get a +1 to a stat. More exciting. That does not function like a tome in the sense that you get to apply it to your first level of... well, you don't get to apply that +1 to buying feats, at least not at first level. The third time you reincarnate in a race, you get +1 racial action point, which is really the higher... I mean, that's really a lot of power when you start to ramp this stuff up. I think someone in my guild said they've got like 95 action points now or something like that. So and that's a lot of extra action points. We consider that 80 is the baseline for a level 20 character. Having an extra 15 is a big deal.
That's with the +1 and +2 tome.
It's +2 racial and a +1 universal tree. Something like that. I don't remember the actual number right off the top of my head, but still, it's a big deal.
They released an upgrade tome in the DDO store for like racial. A couple of days. Yeah, for the racial. So like, I'm not counting the universal tree one. I that's so new to me that I still don't count it. But well, I think you get like, I want to say 14, 15 just in racial AP now. Just if you have racial completion.
There's 12 races.
Yeah, 14.
Plus the one for... So yeah, 95 is the most action, and that's a lot, as I said. So we'll talk about the individual ones. You can also get racial completionist. To get racial completionist, heroic completionist, the way it works is you need 1 past life in each class, and then you can take a feat. Racial completionist, the good news is the feat is free. You don't have to take it as a feat. It gets granted to you when you meet the requirements. The bad news is the requirement is to get 3 past lives in each one of the races, which is more work.
Yeah,
a lot more work.
About triple the work.
Yes. There's I can't remember how many classes are off the top of my head anymore, but it's around 11 or 12, I think. So, good news, bad news. So that's something to consider. Really quickly, I'm going to run down the list of what you get for the first and second past life. So ASMR, you get +1 to heal, then +1 to wisdom. Dragonborn is +1 to spellcraft, +1 to charisma. Drow is +1 to search, +1 to intelligence. Dwarf is +1 to balance, +1 constitution. Elf or wood elf is +1 to spot, +1 to dexterity. Gnome is +1 UMD, +1 intelligence. Halfling is +1 move silently, +1 dexterity. Half elf is +1 diplomacy, +1 charisma. Half orc is +1 intimidate, +1 strength. Human is +1 haggle, +1 wisdom. Tiefling is +1 spellcraft, +1 charisma. And Warforged is +1 repair, +1 constitution. That's what you get for them. Let's talk a little bit about how you should consider ordering your racial past lives.
I feel like that's simple. You whatever class you mainline in, like if you're a warlock, you want to do charisma and constitution. Constitution helps everyone, of course.
Yep.
I kind of wish, like as a side note, that they would switch Dragonborn to the second strength race a little bit, because they do get a charisma and strength bonus.
Sure. Yeah. And they did say that they weren't necessarily gonna like even out the stats. That wasn't necessarily the intent or the design goal. You'd raise a good point though. I think it's kind of weird that both Dragonborn and Tiefling are +1 to spellcraft. As far as the skills go, +1's not gonna make or break anything. Having said that, +1 for Gnome for UMD, pretty nice.
Really good.
that is clearly the most powerful one of the bunch because UMD is the hardest one to increase. Bonuses to UMD are typically intentionally suppressed. Most notably, when you're talking about like skill tomes, you can only get like what a +3 UMD skill tome or something like that.
They have +5 on sale
Do
sometimes.
they? Okay.
Very rare.
Yeah.
I happen to got one when I had the money. I'm lucky.
uh, so the skills I don't think are necessarily going to make or break much. I'll take an argument to say that the other skill that's really useful is the +1 to intimidate from half orc for a tank, because intimidate can be hard to really ramp up high enough to get. Lord of Blades in particular is really high intimidate.
Yeah. Well, especially if you, for some reason, want to be a halfling tank and the size difference needs to
Oh
be made up.
yeah, that's a good point. It's a rough thing. Um, but the skill's not really where you're likely to do. It's really about the stat, right? And what stats are important to you. Um, if you're gonna get them all, you know, I would say my recommendation would be if you're gonna get all of them, if you're going for triple racial completionist, or if you're going for racial completionist, that means 3 lives for each of them. Uh, consider what kind of build you're gonna have. Uh, think about how you would build that character in terms of assigning build points to take stats at character creation. Whichever stats your first primary stat, get that one first for your racial
Yeah.
lives, and the second, the third, the fourth, like so on and so forth. Right? That would be how I would say is probably the best way of doing it. Having said that, it's not necessarily that easy, right? Like maybe you want to have a different kind of character and different lives. Um, so maybe you're gonna be a strength-based melee a couple for one race, and you're gonna be a charisma casting sorcerer for another race. People do that. That's totally fine. Uh,
Guilty of that.
it gets more complicated at that point, right? So you
Definitely.
might want to do a little bit more calculus about how you want to order your past lives and what those are going to look like, and maybe try to build with that in mind. So before you do the DC casting wizard, maybe you would already want to have had the drow and gnome past lives, so you get the +1 intelligence, or the +2 intelligence at that point. So, um, but I think that the bigger takeaway though is we would probably both recommend, since racial completionist, you have to get all 3 lives for each race. Do 3 lives of the same race before you go on to the next one, so you get that
Yes.
racial action point. I think that's the biggest probably takeaway of this conversation.
Yeah, I feel like the second and third racial past life in any race is going to be really important for the next race that you
Mm-hmm.
choose. Because that's pretty much how I leashed it. Like for instance, my third human life was a death domain cleric because I'd had +2 to wisdom. I already had my charisma past lives and my con past lives, so it made more sense to me that that's where I would go for my third human.
I would say there's another way I think you can think about it in terms of um, which racial trees are the best, and go backwards. So like pick the worst racial tree as your first race to do. Uh,
Yeah,
which I
I,
would say is probably somewhere half orc and drow are probably my 2 least favorite racial trees.
Drow for me, to be honest, like their top tier only has like 2 abilities. There's nothing
Yeah,
except maybe +1 to enchantment DCs if you need it. But you have to like get up there and stack 3 of the +3 to saves, and then nothing is hidden. That's the only 2 good things.
yeah.
Everything else I can deal.
I personally like the Warforged. Like I like Warforged trees. The ASMR tree I really like. Um, Human's pretty decent, but I tend not to go very deep in it. Um, again,
There's a lot of multi-selecting.
yeah, there is. I do like the human tree. There's some really nice stuff in there. I would say that's kind of more of a middle road one. Um,
Yeah, I agree with you on Warforge, but I know my TR buddy doesn't. The memories of the last war is so strong of an enhancement line. You can get a lot of PR, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
universal spell power, and so it's customizable to the class that you play, and it's powerful, and you're not going to get that bonus pretty much anywhere else.
Sure.
So, um, but also on the other hand, it's a construct, and if you're leveling up in Reaper, you might want to get this one done out of the way. But like I think what Patrick was getting at is that once you scale up in racial AP, you might want to save some of those trees for the like if you have 2 AP, that would be a good time to invest in a tree where you only need 2 AP in, like a race, right?
Yeah. Again, drow.
Yeah,
Dwarf
drow.
is dwarf. I think is pretty decent if you're playing a melee, because there's some fun stuff there that you can get. Gnome's pretty decent. Some of the other ones, like I just don't ever find myself spending a lot of points in them. I would say if you like ranged, maybe elf, and I believe half elf. Also, half elf get access to arcane archer.
Yes.
And that's an investment in action points, so that would be a good one to do later if you're planning on taking if you like being arcane archer,
If you don't like Corvair Elf, you can also use Wood Elf
right?
to get the Elven ratio.
Which I would recommend if you have, because I think the wood elf is far better than the normal elf, unless you're a
I
straight
agree.
up caster. In which case,
And,
it might be more of a toss up.
and their dance is so much better.
Sure, it's all about the dances, right? Clearly. Um,
That's my most.
so, like I said, there's not a lot to really get into with racial reincarnation though, because the differences are not as the real power that you're going to get out of these are the racial action points. It's not a unique feat to each one. So
I would also like to. I agree with you, but I also think the stats are really important. For instance,
sure,
if you get a +1 to strength, right, and you're gonna do a strength build, and the max strength you can get is 18. There's no point of going 18 and then getting a 19 unless somehow that miraculously adds up at 30, right? And I'm not gonna do the math, so I'm gonna put that strength to 17. That saves me like what 4 point buy-ins. I can put that in int and get more skill points while leveling up.
sure. Yeah, the stat one though is a lot harder to I think to guide people with because it's well Constitution's a really good one to go for first because it's more hit points.
Yeah.
Um, After that, it's again I think it comes down to what kind of build are you going to be mostly playing? What stat would you pick first? What stat do you want to maximize? That's I think where you want to start looking at first. If
That
you think
does
about
make
that,
it hard for newer players that don't really
sure.
have. Cause for me, I knew charisma was big because I love bards. So charisma, con, and then wisdom because my will save sucks as a bard unless I
Mhm.
waste a feat. You know what I mean? So like you do have to plan it out for what you taste, what your tastes are. I guess this is why heroic completionist is still relevant, so you can actually get a taste of the classes too.
Sure, yeah. It would not be a bad idea to get heroic completionist before you did some of these. I would say in a vacuum, in terms of stats, you should go for first Constitution, um, and then if you like hitting things, Strength would be a natural next choice. Uh, if you like some of the more utility type builds, I would say Dexterity or Intelligence.
I
Uh,
would go with int because just the increased skill points after character
it's
creation.
true. That's a really good way to go. Get the extra skill point. I like that. There's also well, actually, does this intelligence apply to skill points?
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if it does or not.
So every +1 is another plus
Right, but
skill point.
items don't affect it, so that's why I was
No.
wondering. Um, and I don't think I've actually I haven't gotten intelligence past lives because those are gnome and drow, and those are not not my
Yeah.
favorite races.
I save I
Um,
save those for the end.
yeah. Uh, I will probably do. I am actually planning on getting racial completionist on a character. I don't know why I'm thinking this, and I will probably regret it, but I will probably do drow and gnome rather early to get them out of the way. Uh, but in any case, uh, intelligence is a nice one because you mentioned the skill points. But also, Harper Agent is intelligence based, and there's a lot of you can get intelligence to hit into damage. So that's an option. Intelligence also works really well with a lot of classes because one, you can use Harper Agent to use it to hit damage. You can use it for artificers. They can also use hit damage and build some spells off of that. Trapping uses intelligence. There's a lot of spell casting that uses intelligence. It's a pretty ubiquitously helpful stat to a lot of different build archetypes.
I feel like the most important thing a lot of people overlook is like, I don't know, I think you get like 3 skill points if you have a base int on a monk, and you're like, well,
It's
I'm
four.
investing in constant 4. Well, this gives you another point for UMD. Like if you
Sure.
find your skill points tight already, like I know clerics have a hard time fitting jump in their repertoire. Well, this is a good way to get it.
Yeah, fighters and clerics only get 2 skill points per level, plus their intelligence modifier. And
Yeah,
what's worse is for fighters and less for fighters, but fighters and clerics don't tend to be classes that tend to put a lot of high value in intelligence. So if you use intelligence as a dump, then you're only getting 1 skill point per level, and then it's worse, right?
exactly.
So yeah, um,
But I think I don't know if we mentioned this. These all go onto your character sheet as soon as you're done with character creation.
mhm.
So level 2 and up, you'll get another skill point, and that's just so much more versatility when building your team.
It is. It's a big deal. Charisma is another good one. If for no other reason than it increases your UMD skill, uh, which, as we mentioned, UMD is probably one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable skill you can have. Uh, so that's always going to be a beneficial. Uh, Plus, if you're using people skills, right? Like that's if you're using intimidate or diplomacy, that can be really big help.
If you use your table manners,
um, I would say that unless wisdom is a really high priority for you, um, I think human and ASMR are probably two of the best ones to do last. One, because they have really good racial trees. Two, because I think like again in a vacuum, wisdom is probably the least useful stat. I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of pushback on that. But if you're trying to pick just generically in a vacuum, what is the stat that the fewest number of character builds are going to prioritize wisdom for, or prioritize the stat for? I think it's wisdom.
I agree with the wisdom because most of the classes and features that do need wisdom, they don't necessarily at the moment need a +1 or +2 if you
Yeah.
have racial complete. You know what I mean? Like they're not missing. The only thing they're really missing is insightful wisdom and endgame. But besides that, you can do without the +2 to the +4 for racial completeness to wisdom and not miss it.
Yeah, and you're not getting the +2 for racial completionist till you have it anyways. So
Exactly.
it's the difference in two. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's the difference of +2 to any one of these stats from racial reincarnation. Um, I don't know. There's not a whole. I am probably the kind of person that probably would think of it in terms of. I know for my monk, it's like, okay, I want to get to this benchmark of this many action points because the character that I want to build, I know that this is how many action points I need to achieve that build, and that's what I'm aiming for, right? So I figured out, okay, where I need to get there. Okay, I need 7 more action points, so I've got 3 covered with tomes now. Thank you. That reduces 3 past lives out of the chain I need to do. So what's the most useful for him? Okay, Constitution, clearly helpful for a monk. Wisdom, except I'm actually not doing ASMR because that's going to be his primary race. So I figure if I ever get back to him, I can do ASMR first, right?
Yeah.
So I can still reincarnate him and get something out of it without having to use a heart. Um, and then dexterity for reflex saves, and that's kind of the line of thinking I went through for him. I do intend on, for some silly reason, pursuing racial reincarnate or racial completionist and heroic completionist with my tank, because I mean that's the character that I think could benefit the most from the investment and what he does, and they're the harder ones to build, and it's a lot harder to get by on a tank and a DC caster when you're really pushing the difficulty level envelopes. So those are the ones that I think you can get the most bang for your buck out of investment. So that's what I'm looking at doing with him. I'll be honest, for the racials, since I'm going to do them all, I'm looking more in terms of which races do I like less, and am I going to use the tree less in. Drow will probably be the first one out of the gate because I don't know that I've ever actually spent racial action points in Drow intentionally without having to be forced to do so by racial action point domes.
Yeah, in my personal opinion, the only thing really strong about Drow is that it gets Shuriken expertise as a free feat. Which I'm probably wrong. People probably out there like, Drow is so powerful. I'm like, well, for me, it's the Shuriken expertise is all I need it for.
Sure. So, and even then, if that's what you're taking it for, be a human and take it with your human bonus feat.
Exactly. Like, there's just so many ways you can do it.
So, there you go. That's probably kind of what. Well, when I actually do a racial completion, I'm probably gonna be looking more at the tree and what trees I can actually get a lot of value out of on the character as opposed to the stats. It is a game. We've talked about this before. It is a game of plus ones. But absent of that, like when you're only talking about getting a +1 or a +2, out of when you already have 40 to 50, that's not as big of a deal as so I don't know. You want to any closing thoughts you got on this?
Besides the whole, to add on to that last thing, is the games of plus ones. That's why I feel like racial completionist is such a bigger thing than just getting, like, if you really want to, you can get here and there plus 1 to strength, +2 to con, +2 to this. But for me, when it's a +3 to strength and +5 to, or wait, yeah, +5 to charisma, that
Yeah.
that for speaks volumes compared.
Yeah, the completionist really gets a lot more value out of it for sure. So there you go. All right, we're gonna wrap this up. There's our, like I said, racial reincarnation. It's a lot simpler than all the other reincarnations. It just is.
It works.
When you're deciding between different stat, like just between different stat, there's a lot less to really think about as opposed to like heroic past lives or epic past lives. So there's all these other things that they do. Which one do you want to get more and
Yeah, this
that kind of
one's
thing.
very like ladder linear. You can
Yeah.
see the beginning to the end pretty clear.
It is still very different though because the power level is a ramp, right? The first one is the power +1 to a skill, not breaking the bank on any kind of power. Even a
Yeah,
+1 to stats not necessarily as power. I don't think +1 to stat is as powerful as a lot of the heroic past life feats. But when you talk about extra action points, now you really start talking about extra bells and whistles you can get on your character, especially when
I
you're on a
totally
tree
agree.
especially when you're on a race that you can find places to spend all those action points. So.
I totally agree. I feel like the half orc strength is nowhere near the monk +1 to damage because you can't get +1 to damage with a +1 to strength.
Right? Yeah. But when you start talking about having all those extra action points,
Ah, that's where you get it.
and I didn't say a lot of the heroic. I think the heroic past lives are all stronger. Like if you got 3 of one action of one class relative to 3 of one race, I still think the heroic classes are probably still more powerful. Like across if you added all 3 of those up, but the thing about the racial ones is it doesn't matter what class you're playing and what build you're doing. Another action point and a +1 to any stat is universally going to be a bigger deal than +1 to damage. Because if I'm playing a
Yeah,
caster, +1 to damage isn't going to do me anything. So
I think I said this when we did the prioritizing the first prioritizing past lives is that racial and epic are just good for everyone.
Yeah,
Though those past lives, it doesn't matter what you're playing; those two will benefit your tune no matter what.
it's true. It's very true. All right, we're gonna close out the show here. So thanks to Nimvind for joining me. Do you want to plug some stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel. I just got done posting a guide to Ravenloft, and I'm doing some external Reaper Life 3. Reaper Life 3 can be found on Voodoo Spice's YouTube channel. I'm doing some external extra videos for that. You can catch that on my.
Great. And also, Highlanders of Malkir are doing teaching raids on Saturdays. Still like what, a month, 2 months in that, I think.
I'm so segregate. Like I don't hope I'm
Wrong
like the
person to
ad.
ask.
Yeah, but we just did Strawn and Bomba yesterday, so yeah, yesterday. So I think we still have a couple more raids to go.
Yeah, and you can catch that on Voodoo's YouTube as well. He posts all those, and I believe he live streams them as well. So,
Yes.
uh, so thanks to all the other contributors as well, and thanks to Standing Stone Games and Wizards of the Coast, and to Cyber Ears for hosting the podcast. If you'd like to support the show, you can visit our website, DDOCast.com, or you can support us on Patreon. If you have a DDO-themed webpage or you Twitch DDO and you'd like to be featured on our website, you can email me at ddocast@gmail.com. You can also hit us up at DDOCast.com for show notes, MP3s, or calendar, previous shows, and other fun stuff. If you'd like to be a part of the show or have a comment on this episode, a question you'd like to hear us answer, or a topic you'd like to hear us discuss, or you just want to say hi, you can leave a comment or you can email us at ddocast@gmail.com. You can also find us for latest cast on social media and follow us for latest cast updates at DDOcast on Twitter is the best place to do that. So until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your chests level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to gather for buffs.